So you guys may remember early last year Nintendo announced Labo, and honestly I thought Labo was a very cool idea from Nintendo. It got people thinking about video games in another way. It got people creating stuff for the first time. It got also people playing these different creations. You had things like a piano, a fishing rod, a house. You just got all these different contraptions, which pretty much uses the Joy-Cons in a special way. And I thought this was absolutely a brilliant idea from Nintendo. I guess the only two downsides to Labo was the fact that, first of all, Labo was very expensive. I think the variety kit was $70 and then the robot was $80. So you can see it does cost you more than a AAA big blockbuster game, which normally retails at $60. So you can see they're much more expensive for these experience, which I think a lot of people realize that these were just very expensive for what you're getting. Cool concept, just too expensive. And then on top of that, I heard it was a pain in the ass if you actually wanted to set up these creations that are Labo kits. I heard some of them could take up to like 5 hours depending on which one you build, and especially if you're trying to build the robot. I heard the robot could be a disaster to build, so you can see that this thing had some flaws in the making, but overall it was a very cool concept. We never seen something like this in the gaming space at all, and you know Nintendo, when it comes to weird things in the gaming space, Nintendo likes doing all these weird things that typically you don't see from other companies like Sony or Microsoft when it comes to gaming. But it looks like Nintendo is back at it again, because it looks like we officially have more Labo on the way. What type of Labo do we have on the way this year? Well, it looks like it has been confirmed. We have VR for the Nintendo Switch, but it's not what you're thinking. It's not your standard VR contraption like the PSVR or like an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift. We're not talking about that type of VR. We're actually talking more close to Google Cardboard. If you ever used Google Cardboard, you pretty much make a VR headset out of cardboard and then you plop the Switch in it and then you play it like that. I think this may be a very cool idea from Nintendo. Now when it comes to this VR experience for the Switch, they are going to have two different SKUs for this. They're going to have a starter kit. The starter kit, surprisingly, is only going to be $40, so I think Nintendo really learned from those Labo in the first place being super expensive at $70 and $80. I think Nintendo realized that those were just too high for the average consumer, and that is a lot of money considering these Labo kits are only a one-and-done type deal. They're really games that you want to play one time and then move on. You don't really revisit these games, and they don't have high replayability, so Nintendo really understands it. And I think at $40, this may be appealing to a bigger variety of people who didn't want to buy it due to the price in the first place. And then we have a bigger set, which is, I think, going to be $70, and this one is the whole meat and potatoes if you want to go all out for it. So I know you get like an elephant, you get like, you just get these different things for the VR, so it's a very cool thing that they are including more if you want more out of your experience with this. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to this VR headset and this whole VR experience Labo type deal on the Nintendo Switch, we don't have any official gameplay for this Labo kit. So what are we talking about when it comes to this actual functionality of this Labo, and what are we going to be getting? Well, don't be expecting anything crazy. Of course, since this is only going to be cardboard, you're not going to be getting the same experiences, of course, you would be getting on like a PSVR, Oculus Rift, things like that. You're not going to be getting AAA quality games. What I'm assuming is when you play this, I've already said this before in another video when I talked about the rumors, I was saying that most of these games that you're going to be playing in VR are just going to be simple mini games. It's going to be like testing the water to really see what the Switch is capable in VR. It's not going to be anything too crazy. So going back to what I was saying was, I think $40 is very great for these Labo kits, because the starter kit will get you started, and on top of that, you guys know this is a one and done type deal. You play this, and then after this, you really just give up on the whole experience after you've tried it out a couple of times. So $40 won't feel like you're getting robbed all too much, and it's like a one and done type experience. So I think that's a very good idea. Now, are these kits actually for me, and am I actually going to be picking these up? Unfortunately, no. I never picked up the original Labo, but I had good reason not to pick up the original Labo. I knew what I was getting myself into. This kind of stuff is cool, and I am interested. I know this stuff is much more geared towards the kid aspect instead of like grown-ups and adults. A lot of grown-ups and adults are just too lazy to do stuff like this. They just want to sit down and play a video game. But personally, for me, I do think these are very cool ideas, and I would be interested to try these. Maybe at $40, I might dive into these, but here's the problem with it. The problem I really have with these things, like I said before, these are a one-and-done type experience. So once you try this out, you really try the mini games or try whatever game you're talking about with these Labo kits, especially the VR, you're pretty much going to never want to pick it up ever again. And that's something, it's hard for me to justify, something I can't come back to in the future most likely. Once I play it, I'm never going to touch it in my life ever again. So it's hard for me to justify 40. When 40 is a lot of money, even $70, I can go ahead and buy another game that has more replayability, and maybe in the future I can revisit those games, but I can't justify these type of experiences, when especially too, the quality of the games with these Labo kits aren't that good. They're just little taste things. Like we all know, these VR experiences with the Nintendo Switch is not going to be all that mind-blowing and be all that complex and be all that amazing when it comes to gaming, but I think it's a very cool thing. Maybe for 40, like I said, I might check this out, and this might be something I want to do. It also depends on how hard it is to build this VR experience when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, because I'm a person that's not good when it comes to creativity. My creativity is pretty much on a very low level, and sometimes it's hard for me to do stuff like build stuff and things like that, so it may be a hard time for me to actually make this VR set. But from what I'm seeing from this, it looks like the VR headset itself, the standard VR headset that goes over your face and you plop the Switch into, it looks like it's not going to be all that hard to actually build. So maybe I'll be able to figure out how to actually make this, and this actually could be a cool idea. How well is VR actually going to look on the Nintendo Switch with this cardboard contraption? Honestly, I don't think it's going to look all that great, because as you guys know, the resolution on the Nintendo Switch is only 720p when you play in handheld mode, so having a screen that close up to your face in handheld mode is not going to look all that great, but it should be something. You're probably talking about less than HD quality. Honestly, even though the Switch is HD, you have to take into consideration how close the Switch is going to be to your head. I do know I have tried VR out on smartphones, and smartphone displays are higher than 1080p. I think a lot of smartphones are still at that 2K resolution or 1440p. I remember when I tried it back on my old Note 5 a long time ago, I remember the experience being quite grainy. So you can see, putting a display up to your face that high is going to make the picture quite grainy, but it's their first attempt at VR, and we all know Nintendo really couldn't do a true VR experience with the Switch. Let's be honest, the Nintendo Switch is not that powerful. Even if you were to plop the Nintendo Switch into the dock and then have a dedicated box that plugs into the dock, the USBs, or if you had one that just plugged directly into the dock with USBs, we all know the Nintendo Switch is not that powerful. The Tegra X1 chip from 2015 cannot handle VR. Let's be honest, because we all know VR experiences, even on PC, you have to have a pretty beastly PC to even be able to run VR experience. So we all know Nintendo wouldn't want to go that way, and on top of that, they really just want to test the waters out. If they were going to do a true VR experience, I think of course they would have to make a whole new powerful Switch, or maybe make a dock that has a GPU inside of it to make sure that the experiences could be handled in VR. But I think this is a very cool idea from Nintendo, and they're pretty much ripping out the playbook from Google when it comes to this, because Google already made this with Google Cardboard. But it's not always a bad idea to take another creation from another company and give it a go somewhere else, and I think this would be a very cool idea. We don't know, like I said again, what type of games we're going to be playing on these, but we're not going to be talking about any crazy VR experiences from Nintendo. I wouldn't even assume that we're going to be talking about any first-party IPs being played in VR. We're going to be talking about some weird mini games, just like a little testing of what to expect on VR from the Labo kits. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.